Hi there, my name's Sam Johnson. I'm going to talk about my trip to Skern Lodge on an outdoor adventure and activity trip. So Monday the 25th, we arrived. Monday the 25th of November, we arrived, and at 1 p.m. we then dropped all our clothes off and met up for team building exercises where we all had to work together to complete lots of different challenges that were going on, like completing squares, getting things from one side to another without touching the ground. And we found that the best technique for that was communication, working together to get the challenge complete, but by checking how ready each other were. We were discussing all the best possible options to take, and then choosing the best one out of them and going with that one. We also had to do an assault course when we arrived. We found that the best technique for this was to go single file along each activity, but then as you pass it, you advise the next person of how they can best do it, due to what you found difficult, and then when they try that, they can let the next person know, and then by the end of the line, everybody's got it spot on. And we were also often linking together to stabilise each other and hold each other up. So that we found that was a pretty good technique, and that helped us complete the course to the best of our ability. Later on that day, we went on to do the tunnels and nightline, and I was the leader for that activity. For the nightline, we were blindfolded and then put into our groups of 8. I, as the leader, had to hold onto the line with one hand and then feel my way through the forest around different obstacles and directing my team. And we found that the best technique for this was passing the information along as to what obstacles were coming up, which direction we were going, whether we were going to have to duck, jump, climb, switch sides of the rope, and we just sort of passed that along down the line, a bit like Chinese whispers, but a lot clearer, so that everyone knew exactly what they were doing. And we did this so that we didn't get sort of interfered with by the other teams making quite a lot of noise, because they were all shouting instructions down their lines and we didn't want it to get crossed over to us, so we ended up doing the wrong thing. The next day, Tuesday the 26th of November, we had rafting first thing in the morning. We started off rafting by just sort of getting each other into sync, learning which side of the paddle to use. So we had the curved face sweeping against the water, and then from there we went on to sort of discussing which was the best ways to steer. So we ended up going with having 2 people at the back. When you need to turn, they dip their paddle into the water so it turns the boat in their direction. We found this was a pretty good technique to use, and it then meant that the rest of the guys could just focus on staying in sync and getting our raft moving as quickly as we could go so that we could beat other teams. So that was the rafting. Later on that day, we had climbing. For the climbing, we had to get to the top of the climbing wall, and we had the option of using different colours going up in difficulty. So you had yellow, green and blue going up in difficulty in that direction. Or to begin with, you could just start off by using all of the colours going up as quickly as you can. I found that the best technique for this was to try and, when you're holding yourself up, try and get your feet up as high as you can, so maybe up to your hip height, so that you can use that foot to push off for your next grab, so you can go a lot higher each step than if you were just taking little steps, little like footsteps up. And I felt that this technique allowed me to move a lot faster than I would have done otherwise. The next thing that we did after climbing was abseiling. With the abseiling, we had to climb to the top of the abseiling wall and then attach ourselves and lean backwards off of it, pressing with our feet against the wall, shoulder width apart roughly, and our back and backsides in line with our feet so that we weren't falling and hitting our head on the wall. The best technique for this was just to push out as much as you can while holding the rope tight, so that you had got a lot of pressure against the wall, and the more effectively you could do this, the quicker you could abseil down. So that's that. After abseiling, we moved on to the high ropes, which is where we were attached to a rope that we then had to climb a beam that was roughly 10 feet in the air, and then we would walk across that beam and then climb up to another beam that was possibly another 15 feet higher than that. So we were about 25 foot in the air, walking along beams that were about a foot wide. Not a foot wide, about half a foot wide. And I felt the best technique for this was to hold the rope or hold the beam initially to stabilise yourself, and then take small steps, watching where your footing goes, and if you're going to fall, lean in the complete opposite way quite hard to sort of stabilise yourself. And I felt this worked quite effectively, and that allowed me to get across the beam without falling off. When I was on the high ropes, I was doing press-ups and hanging off and then climbing back on. So that was some of the sort of skills that I involved in the high ropes. Later on the Tuesday evening, we went and done search and rescue. We found that communication was really important for this, which was our best technique, was to constantly discuss with each other what we know, what we don't know, what options are available, and continuously check the map to see where Laura could possibly be, because she was the casualty that we had to retrieve. We also sort of found the centre of the coordinates where she could be, and then sort of set up a rough perimeter of the areas inside that, like around there, that she could be, and sort of split up and find her. That seemed to work quite effectively. It's a shame we got off to kind of a slow start though, which meant we fell behind. But that was search and rescue. I think once we had decided what to do, we found her quite effectively and quickly, but as I say, we were let down by poor communication at the start. After search and rescue, we went to bed, and we were up again early for clean sweep the next day at 9 o'clock, which was Wednesday the 27th of November. So clean sweep involved doing the trapeze, which was a beam about 25 feet in the air, the same height as the top beam on the high ropes. But we had to climb up to that, and that was just like a sort of telegraph pole where you had to stand on the top with just enough space for 2 feet to go on it, really. Then had to leap from there about 6 foot across and catch a bar that was hanging. So that was the trapeze. We also did the climbing wall. We done a team building exercise again, which was to build a square. where we got to look at a picture and then we had to piece together all the different parts of the square. We found the best technique for that was to just remember certain parts of the square each and then all communicate to put the rest of it together. We also done the assault course, but this time we had to retrieve eggs and get them back to the start as quickly as we could, because we only had 30 seconds. We found that the best technique for this was to gently throw the eggs across the obstacle course to the next person waiting, so that we didn't have to carry it along and risk breaking it. We found that was quite effective, but we didn't use that technique to begin with, so we did actually break. We didn't actually get the first 2 eggs there in time. So yeah. The final activity we did in the clean sweep was the Jacob's ladder, which was loads of different beams placed like maybe 7 or 8 foot, about 8 foot difference in between, going all the way up to about 25-30 feet in the air. And they were only attached to loose ropes, so they were swinging about all over the place, and we had to climb up with one other person, a partner. I climbed up with Nick Walker, and we were using each other to stabilise and boost up to the next beam to get right to the top. So clean sweep was all about earning points for different activities to win the challenge overall, and I felt we'd done really well in that because we came second. So yeah, that was a clean sweep.